it's all here. It's all electronic, but I'm probably the slowest on this.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this study session of the Board of Education, the fourth Tuesday of May. Please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I'm special.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Too excited. I'm already in trouble tonight. I didn't call this meeting to order. We'll call this meeting to order, and we'll move on to announcements. We have a small crowd tonight. We have an agenda at the back of the room for anybody who needs it. I did want to make one announcement, and I'm sure we'll hear about this some more, but this afternoon we got an email about our varsity sports teams, student athletes, and sometimes we always talk about, and people give us a hard time about the big green machine out there, but what people don't always recognize is that big green machine is studying a lot of the time, because when you look at the results of where these teams have come, for the 7th straight season, every varsity team is qualified as student athletes, and the second year in a row, Shenendehowa will receive the prestigious School of Distinction Award from the Athletic Directors Association. And I just want to point out, I don't know, we got some numbers, the averages for the teams. The boys tennis, 96.45 average, and but I do want to, we're going to have to lay some challenges out here on the boys after that, because the girls track and field, 95-75, the boys 95 even. Softball, girls softball 95-12, boys baseball 93.95, girls lacrosse 94, boys lacrosse 91.51. Those are wonderful numbers to have, aren't they? And they're really a tribute, I think, to the work that's done here. I think the coaches have more of an impact on these kids than just how to play the game. They really push this, and I think it's worthy of recognition as we start this meeting. So
can I just also say, I
yes,
think Chris Cullen deserves a lot of credit too, because he set the bar a few years back on where our kids should be, where our athletes should be academically, and he's put in motion policies and procedures and standards, and I think that he certainly, I know the coaches deal with them every day, but Chris really set the standard, and I think he deserves a ton of recognition for that.
Thank you. Can we have a motion to adopt the agenda? Jim, second. Todd? All those in favor? Motion's adopted. We're going to move to superintendent's communication, but first I'm going to call on Linda to come forward, right?
You know what? Here,
What would he?
Jim, can you just let him use
Sure.
the mic right here?
Yeah. Oh, sure.
Oh, the microphone.
There you go.
This is sensitive. You don't have to use it.
So I can just talk?
Yes,
Yes, oh,
talk.
perfect. Okay, I'm sorry, I have my back to you.
No, please.
Anyways, hi. Elaine Orsini and Sandy Smith and I'm Linda Snyder, are members of the Schenectady County Retired Teachers Association, which represents teachers and administrators that retired in Schenectady County. So why are we here? Because you're not Schenectady County. However, one of your original teachers when the district was centralized was Mary Hyson. And we needed to get information on Mary Hyson, and so we called the Superintendent Robinson, because we didn't know where she taught or what she taught or whatever. So Mary Hyson, who lived in Schenectady County, left some substantial money to make a memorial fund, which is designated specifically to be administered by the Schenectady County retired teachers to assist retired teachers and administrators. We can't use it for our scholarship for aspiring teachers. We can't use it for people that are in the classroom. We can only use it to help retired teachers and administrators. So Vanessa, this is Vanessa right here. Hi, thank you. Oh, wonderful. In one day, Vanessa pulled together the biography information we needed on Mary Heisen and also sent photos. So we have a little biography because we just had our 50th anniversary of the Schenectady County Retired Teachers. It was started in May 1965. So we called Senator Farley, and they did a joint resolution between the Senate and Assembly of New York State to recognize the Schenectady County Retired Teachers. And they did a citation about Mary J. Heisen, which tells everything specifically to what Mary did in her career, all through the whereas part. So she's been recognized by New York State, and we wanted to give this to you to hang here at Shenendehowa because this is where she came from. She taught kindergarten. She started way back at Round Lake, I believe, in one of the small schools. Then everybody consolidated, and I believe she always taught kindergarten, but we wanted to give you the biography as well as her picture, and we'd love to have you frame this and hang it someplace because she should be honored along with everybody else. I don't know if you have a Hall of Fame. Some school districts do. And so this is from Senator Farley on behalf of the Senate and the Assembly. We couldn't have done it without Superintendent Robinson and Vanessa pulling together all this information. And we can enlarge like her picture and stuff so that you could really see it because you can't really, but it tells what she did and where she went to school and what she taught, and then that she then left funds to be used to help retired teachers because back in the, the early 1900s, teachers did not have money to survive on. And when they retired, it was even worse. And so now we can use this money too for anybody who lives in Schenectady County that might teach here. They can also belong, any administrators or teachers. So please pass that information on also. I don't know, do you want, I can leave this here, you can pass this around if you want to look at it.
Yeah.
And I can give you a bigger, this is our program from our 50th anniversary, but it also has the information about Mary. So, whoops, thank you so much and enjoy it because she was quite a woman.
Thank you.
It's been a long time, absolutely. Good seeing you. Beautiful house.
We always talk about teachers' legacy, so that's great.
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I should have said, as part of our announcements, joining us tonight at the table is Christina Rajat, who was just elected to the school board in our vote a week ago today. And she'll be joining us at the table here through the end of June, and then we'll be sworn in at our first meeting in July. So welcome, Christina, and congratulations. And congratulations to Bob.
Thank you very much, Mr. Casey, and I appreciate the recognition of Mrs. Heisen. It's so fun. It's a small world. Mrs. Orsini, the other lady here, I haven't seen her in like 15 years because she retired when I was at Mahonesi. So it's interesting to have people out of the blue call up and say that they're doing something else for someone out of the blue, so to speak, and show how small the struggle truly is. And certainly I also want to give kudos to Jill Bush and her staff. Did a lot of legwork pulling up, we didn't realize we have so many records beyond years that we anticipated. So it's just great to go to the exercise as well, so acknowledgement is great. Just actually three quick announcements. One related to Mrs. Rajat. I think we have, Mr. Casey, June 8th, we have an orientation session with Mrs. Rajat from 10 to 2. For board members who have gone through that before, we have many, many things on the agenda. You walk out of there with more questions than you walk in because you didn't realize what you didn't know until you got there. So we're looking forward to ensuring that she really wants to be a board member after that experience. So it should be good on the 8th. The second piece of it, Mr. Casey mentioned sports on June 9th. I think the June 9th meeting will be recognizing our spring sports teams as well as our unified basketball sports team, which is the team committed to for students with our special education students. And if you haven't gone to one of those games, I think they may have played their last game already. But certainly for next year, it's one of those things to add to your calendar. And not to prolong this, but I had a gentleman actually on Sunday in Price Shop, and this guy's a big basketball person, coach at the collegiate level and retired now here in Clifton Park. And he said, I've been to Final Fours, I've been to NBA championships, And a reason why I came here, a friend of a friend said, hey, you should come and watch this team. And he said, that was probably the most rewarding experience he's had as a basketball person. Because, and if you saw it, I mean, truly, everything the kids did, to just make a pass, to make a shot, you name it, everything was just like the championship kind of emotions. And so, and it's wonderful that we have a lot of young people who volunteer their time to do it. And so Mr. Cohen will talk a lot more about it on the 9th, but I just want to really express that because, as Mr. Casey said, we get hammered for a lot of things. Unfortunately, there's many wonderful things we do, and people pick out the one or few things that they may not like or disagree, or we probably don't do as well, and want to make that the state's case. But we certainly know that we do a lot of good things here for kids at Shen, and it's one of those proud moments as well. So next year, I certainly, and I think they're going to try to add, if I'm not mistaken, soccer or one of other sports next year. So they're really going to try to expand out. So it's going to be really, really neat experience for those kids. And the last piece of news, I found out, like many people, that today we have a new commissioner of education. And in fact, I just emailed the board and administrators, Mary Ellen Elia. She's last job was the superintendent for Hillsborough County, Florida, which is the Tampa area in Florida, 8th Florida school district in the nation. So we're hoping that she'll bring some grounded perspective to the position. I think I had the benefit of meeting her at the end of the month at one of our CAC meetings, so we get a chance to see what's going to be her platform and perspective coming to the table. So at least the chapters are starting to, I don't want to say be rewritten, but anyway, we're starting to have new chapters for SED and see how the leadership will move us forward. So looking forward to meeting Mary Ellen as well. And those were the announcements, other than when we go into the presentations.
Sure. And normally, I just will point out for people who are here, normally at these study sessions, we don't do action items. We have some action items that we need to move on tonight. They're standard certification of vote, borrowing resolutions, the kind of things that we need to do on a timely basis, and that's why they're on the agenda. They don't really impact us directly in terms of our providing education here, but they're really important to us in terms of doing the business of the...
Appreciate that. So we have 3 presentations, and one is you've seen before in this opportunity to say thank you to different people in our community. Some have Mrs. Carmen speak about our character education recognition.
Okay, so bear with me because we have a couple different recognitions tonight. On behalf of the district's Character Education Committee, I'm here to present 3 awards tonight. This recognition is reserved for any person within our school or community who exhibits outstanding outstanding character by cultivating, fostering, and demonstrating the virtues and skills of civic engagement. Our first recipient is Amy Calazio Schiavo. If Amy could come up here, please. And Ann Schwanda, if you could come up here, please. As a preschooler, Amy knew the importance of helping others. Amy began volunteering at the age of 4, collecting donations for the American Legion through her Poppy program in honor of her veteran grandfather. By 1st grade, she was so dedicated to helping veterans that she was crowned Miss Poppy. She has continued her work with this organization, collecting supplies and making cards for hospitalized vets in Stratton VA Hospital. During Amy's middle school years, she discovered a love of archaeology and every summer attended a camp at Boston Spa's Brookside Museum. One summer, there was not enough interest in the camp and it was canceled. Amy asked, very disappointed, Amy had asked if there was something she could do at the museum. The camp week was spent researching information on artifacts discovered during a student camp dig and adding information to the museum's Facebook page. She has continued to find ways to help those in need. She frequently serves breakfast with her dad at Schenectady City Mission, has continuously volunteered as a peer tutor since 7th grade, a member of the Guana Junior National Honor Society for 2 years, and also served as a secretary. As a student at Carrigon, she helped with PTA projects, clipping, counting box tops, working at PTA events including Monster Mash, decorating lobby windows, and continues to run experiments during Family Science Night. As a Carrigon student, Amy participated in the Shenendehowa Quilt Project by drawing pictures every fall since kindergarten. Willing to do anything, she volunteered to iron and bundle bindings for the quilts. Every year, Amy has taken on more responsibilities first learning how to sew bindings, and then in the next year asking for a sewing machine for Christmas so she could sew quilts on the Project Sewing Day, Martin Luther King Day. These are just some examples of how she has impacted our community. She is a self-motivated young girl who is quietly making a difference.
We have a certificate for you, and you did all those things, and you're at this age? Wow, amazing. So we presenting the certificate of recognition to you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. What a great example.
The next two recipients are Al and Heather Green. Could you guys come up here, please? Al and Heather Green have never wavered from their committed active participation in the betterment of our community as a whole and for specific groups of individuals with diverse needs. Al is and has always been an advocate both formally and informally for the students struggling with achievement, both academically and socially. His commitment includes very early participation in an unnamed program that eventually evolved into the Behavioral Emotional Social Development Program today, BEDS. He worked to provide the neediest students with opportunities in the arts and recreation that they would otherwise not be able to participate in successfully in the mainstream classroom. Al also participated in the Focus program for the most socially challenged students. Al developed a passion for the struggling student and advocated for the Focus program and helped to change that program into the Middle School Assistance Program, MAP curriculum, way back. This endeavor only ceased in budget and certification issues when many cuts were necessary to survive. Al, always an advocate for a school-wide behavior program in the middle schools, the development of the Middle School Rights and Expectations program while the middle level of education at Shenendehowa evolved was particularly grand achievement for Al and the others who worked out the details of the program that has annually impacted thousands of students over the past decade and a half. Al and Heather have worked to bring students perspective on those struggle outside of our Shenendehowa community. In repeated trips to Uganda, Al and Heather have worked to educate the middle school students on diversity and needs from afar. This has included a wonderful exchange program where Uganda youngsters come to the middle school and sang and danced for the students. It was an amazing achievement that exposed our students to the diversity and need of the world at large. Heather Green has always worked side by side with Al on the achievements described. Heather has become the model of advocacy for the challenged student working in the special education program at Shenendehowa. Through her tireless efforts, Heather has always advocated for the most challenged students. Her development of the program off campus for the 18 to 21-year-old special education student has been invaluable to many students at Shenendehowa that would otherwise be ill-prepared to face the day-to-day challenges of special needs adult life. Her compassion is bridled with no-nonsense approach that treats students with a realistic set of expectations for their successful participation in life, possibly away from home, entering higher education, or successful entry into life of adult assisted living. Heather and Al have for years also run a summer program for students that would otherwise not have the Adirondack experience of their own. They have for many years developed a program for students who would not be able to handle the social aspects of an outdoor experience without their guidance. All in all, Al and Heather have been a tireless pair of advocates within the Shenendehowa Central School community. Their efforts have impacted thousands of students over the years here at Shenendehowa, and they are perfect nominees for this award.
Oh, sure. Yeah, Heather, always the advocate, wants to use the microphone to
Well,
make an announcement.
It was just a little bit mistake. Of course, I'm passionate about the unified sports and think it's great, and their games are not over.
They're not, it's the end of the
No,
game.
the
Oh.
championship is tomorrow at
Okay.
South Colony, and they're super excited.
Oh, wow.
And the other championship, they have two championship games. It's at Skidmore on Saturday morning at 9 o'clock. And so come there. It's really exciting because it's not segregated. They play together with Shen students, so super excited about it.
Good, good.
Thanks.
I just want to say, Julie, we are proud to have you
Thanks.
part of our staff and part of the commitment here at Shenendehowa. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we'll move into Counseling Advisory Committee
Mr.
update.
Ripchick and Mr. Fleck. Chris, when he gets-
Good evening, everybody. I'm Paul Ripchick. I'm the Associate Principal at the high school and Director of Counseling, 9 through 12. Tonight, I've been asked to do a report out of the Counseling Advisory Committee for the 2014-2015 school year. The committee this year met 4 times, 2 in the fall and 2 in the spring. As part of the committee, the counselor representatives had an opportunity at each meeting to report out updates on activities and actions that they've had going on during the course of the year. And the committee themselves had an opportunity to provide some feedback and information as it pertained to a variety of different topics. This year, a large focus of our meetings were specific to the college application process. So what I've decided to do tonight is to give you a highlight of the items that are related specific to that. But we're going to get them. Dr. Robinson is going to put them up. That's all right. You want me to go?
No, keep going.
Okay. These items aren't in any specific order, they're just bulleted. Again, these are related to current things that are taking place as part of the counseling department and/or additional tweaks or adjustments that were made as part of listening to feedback from members of the Counseling Advisory Committee. The first item up there is a recommended summer assignment for students applying to college. This came about as part of conversations tying into tasks and responsibilities that we wanted our juniors to really focus on and address as they got towards the end of their junior year, moving into the summer year. So each of the juniors going to be seniors at the time of their report cards, their hard copy report cards being mailed out, will get a hard copy of a document called Recommended Junior Summer Assignment. I'm going to pass around, I have to do that for everybody. So as you can see, as it gets around, this document identifies 5 or 6 or actually 7 or 8 different things that the counselors are asking the juniors and junior parents to be working on over the course of the summer, with the plan that when they come back and return towards the end of August and going into September, that they're prepared for their meetings or their interviews with the counselors and their senior application process time. So that's that document. The next item on here was the development of a communication timeline. One of the things that we heard over and over again as part of the meetings was the importance of communication, but not only the importance of the communication, but the timeliness of the different types of communication that are going out to students and parents. So one of the things that the counselors have done this year is they're creating a timeline of their own that they'll set up to determine what they're going to communicate out to students and parents at what time of the year. So every year, for consistency purposes, they will have specific items that they're going to communicate out. I'll talk a little bit about the communication here in a minute, but that's something that, again, part of our listening to members, we felt was necessary, and most importantly for consistency purposes over the course of one year to the next. The next item is a parent and student focus groups. These came at the suggestion of Dr. Robinson in a meeting that we had with him. These were focus groups that were held both with students and parent groups that were specific to the college application process. These were senior students and parents. After we presented the information back to the committee, and we felt overwhelming, the feedback was good. A couple of suggestions that they had were, one, making sure that the numbers that we have in our focus group was valid. We want to make sure we have enough people on the focus group. And another thing that we're going to take into consideration and look towards in our future focus groups is that whoever is facilitating the focus group may not necessarily be a counselor. It might be a teacher, it might be, who knows, a student, but somebody that may not represent specifically that body of the counseling department.
How many people were in the groups?
I can't tell you right off,
Okay.
but I know our parent group wasn't the number we wanted. We had invited 8, and I think we had 4. So that's a group we definitely want to continue to work with. The next thing which I'm excited about telling you is our continued collaboration with the English department on the senior essays. Specifically, the English classes, the 12th year English classes, focusing one of their first assignments early in September and early October on that document itself. I met with Kathy Sherwin actually today, and we're in discussions now with not only having that be an activity in the class, but maybe looking at a writing clinic, which would potentially provide students with additional opportunities outside the classroom to meet with somebody to evaluate their essay. So let's say they go to a classroom teacher and the classroom teacher does a look over once. Well, as you know, anybody that does any major writing, you want to have several eyes on it. This would give them an opportunity to go potentially to other people over the course of the creation of that document to get it looked at. So that's something we're in discussion with. We want to continue our relationship with the English department. We're going to be helping, if this goes through, with setting up the appointments for the students right out of the counseling center. As I said, something we're looking forward to. Next item, increased communication with students, parents, teachers, and administration related to our activities and programs. We find that getting the information out to as many groups, valid information out to as many groups as we can plays a positive impact on the development of our program and how well our kids do in the activities they're involved in. So we find that we can't utilize just one form of communication. We have to use a variety of different ones. This year we've continued with Mr. Flint's assistance to use the SIS messenger. We update regularly our newsletters. They go out at a quarterly period. One of the things that we did this year is at each of the faculty meetings, Mr. Flint has allowed the counselors to come in to present to the teachers what it is that they're doing during the course of that time. And of course, we're continuing to use the Naviance messenger. So there's a variety of different items that we're using. We hope to continue to use other ways to do that, whether it be through being members of different groups like parent groups or student groups. We want to continue our communication and information providing to the Board of Education and the superintendent, because we know that they provide a valuable resource to communicating out to the community. Teachers will continue to work with, and that's what we're doing in that area. One of the other pieces of feedback we got from parents is that while they enjoy and we found very beneficial our programs in the evenings, sometimes they can't always get to those programs. So one of the suggestions that was made a couple years ago, and we've done now for a couple of years and will continue, and that's to videotape our presentations. We then take the videotapes and put them up on either the Naviance website or in some cases our counseling website to make them available to parents and students so they can watch them at any point in time during the course of the year. The college application process program. Again, after evaluating the information we gathered and the data we also gathered over the course of a couple years now, we have moved our process from mid-October, to starting it in mid-September. And in some cases with students who have early action, early admission, we're starting the ball even rolling right at the first day of school if necessary. Part of the document that I gave you, there's a piece of communication that goes out to the seniors that indicates that if you have a early action or early admission deadline, please communicate with your counselor immediately so that they can become aware of that and they can be highlighting that as a student that they're going to focus on when they first get back to school. The next item is that the Counseling Advisory Committee had asked that we gather data from other suburban council schools related to their college application process. We went back and did that and actually created a monster spreadsheet based on the times of the year that certain schools in the suburban council are doing different activities. We did focus it just on the junior and senior group this year. I have an interest myself in finding out information as it relates to the freshman and sophomore group going into the future years. Our annual interviews. We currently and have been meeting with students at least once a year individually. Our juniors we meet with twice a year. One of the things that we wanted to do differently this year is not only do we want to have these meetings, but we wanted to have formal documentation of these meetings taking place. So one of the things that one of the counselors had set up for us is we have a task list or something related to that in Naviance, where it sends out a message to a student letting them know they have a meeting with their counselor. When they have the meeting or the interview with that counselor, that then can be checked off, so to speak, and identified for future resource in terms of when the meeting was held. The last piece on here, or the last highlight I have for tonight, is the parent invitation to the junior interview. We made a concerted effort to communicate out in our newsletter that parents are welcome to be part of the junior interview if they felt that they needed to. Well, the counseling group would promote that their meeting initially be with the junior themselves. They understand the importance of parent feedback, and they want parents to know that if there are any questions or concerns when the child comes home, or in fact, they don't want to wait till the child comes home, they just want to meet with them when the counselor meets with them, they have that opportunity. So that was formally sent out as part of an SIS blast and as well as our newsletter for the year.
Quick question. So for somebody who hasn't had a kid in high school yet, what is the junior interview? What's the point behind that whole process?
Okay. Good question.
There's the two interviews that they do with the juniors. One is related to their course selection, which is done in early January, February. And then the second one is relative to their future and their college or career aspirations. That's held a little bit later in the course of the spring.
But that's also tied to, now because we have Naviance 612, kids start building a profile from middle school.
Correct.
So when they do a survey, if you ever do those survey kind of things, because in fact I sat in on, here in the middle school, they started doing the career surveys where kids' interest and that start to drive kids, okay, I want to be a doctor, but I'm afraid of blood. So then you have to realize, I want to be a doctor, but I hate math and science. So it kind of forced kids to start thinking about then where their strengths as well as their weaknesses early, recognizing they'll change over time and they'll change again in college and otherwise too, but it starts building that profile. So when they get into ninth grade, they do another inventory as well. And so now by the time they get to the junior year, when you think about a kid right now, in 5 years, we would have 5 years of different profile on these kids to say how consistent they are with certain things. And so that will make that conversation, I think, much more effective than right now. And it will lend to, I think the most, and I can say this for myself, and Mary probably went through the same thing with her daughter, the most difficult for my kid was to trying to dwindle down to what college, what part of the country, what programs, and what this. And so hopefully this will help kids get to that point so they have a manageable list of schools that they're applying to and not 40 schools that they're applying to because they sound interested and have cool names. I mean, literally, that's many cases. That's some of my kid was at. So we're trying to streamline some of that process as well.
So basically, the parent could be there in case there were questions that
Yeah.
the parent wanted to answer on behalf of their kid.
Absolutely.
Or Yeah, like I said, on behalf of the kid.
I can give some perspective on this. I mean, I've got a ninth grader. Last year, I went to the 8th grade session in High School West. I was very impressed with the content, the clarity, the messages that came across. But the eye-opening thing for me was driving back and my 8th grade son saying, "Dad, I've heard all this already." You know, I felt good that he is hearing this consistent message. You know, but I think that's a good way to look at this meeting, is that sometimes you don't know what they've heard, and sometimes it's not just one person telling them, it's a series of messages that are out there. And sometimes it's good, and particularly for college admission, that they come back and say, the child comes back and says, "I've heard this, what's the big deal?" Well, to me, that is a big deal, because the message has been out there for a while.
And just to add one thing to this, Mr. Ripchick didn't mention it, because I think just makes some assumption. One of the things that he mentioned, the consistency from counselor to counselor, and you mentioned a task list kind of thing. So I call it an agenda. So as a parent, you know that these are the things that will be discussed at the junior conference, and every counselor will be discussing the same thing. So it doesn't matter. If I have Mrs. Gray and she happened to be, organized one way versus Mrs. Rosat organized a different way, two kids may have a different experience, versus we want to have some consistent experiences, and the parents know that. So knowing what the agenda item is going to be, you can make that determination of, do I wait till my kid come home, or do I go before or after, those kind of things. So that's also something that we find that oftentimes people wonder what these junior meetings about, and I don't know because my kid didn't come and talk to me about it. And so we're trying to change that as well. One, to make sure that the meetings happen, like Mr. Ripchick says. Two, but also to have some clear, consistent agenda from counselor to counselor. Recognize they may go beyond that, but these are the core things that we know every counselor in those sequences will be discussing with kids.
Over the course of the summer and leading into next year, we'll continue to look at and listen to feedback from the group. We talked about potentially doing an FAQ sheet for parents to have frequently asked questions. We also we're going to look into the interest that parents have in the experiences, like you said, Mr. Presley, of getting together and hearing from people that have gone through this and what their feedback is, aside from the focus group. Maybe allowing parents to get together as a group to talk. If it does anything to help the anxiety level, we're all for it. We want to be able to make this as a relaxing process as we possibly can for both the student and the parent. So I want to give you a copy. This is more specific details related to the goals that we had talked about earlier in the year, and just to have that as a reflection piece. That would have taken way too long for me to go over with you
So
tonight.
do you have enough copies of it?
Paul, let me say something. I know this, I want to provide a broad board response. So sometimes when you're trying to move something, there's a couple ways to do it. If you can push a rope, but you don't know where it's going, but you have a sense of a direction you want to move in. And I would equate some of our actions jointly as doing that. The board wants to push ahead. We want a world-class counseling center. We're very clear about that. There's another way to move something, and that's to pull together. You can predict it with much more certainty where you're going to get to, and share some common goals. So I think, as I look at the last year, there have been some hiccups, there have been some rough spots. What we're looking for, and I'm pleased with what you have tonight, and look forward. I think the board looks forward to where we're going, that we're pulling in the same direction. And sometimes to get attention, you have to push that rope, and you watch it wiggle around some. But I hope we're at a point. And I hear from within the school and from within the counselors a commitment to doing that. And I want to say that we want the same commitment here. We want to be pulling in the same direction, because this is the end of the process. We're getting close to it, right? you know, and we're going to see those kids up there on the lawn up at Saratoga. And, you know, it's easy to pick out the graduates and you go, what are you going to do? You know, what are you doing? And it's wonderful when we sit here and after we recognize kids are at the student banquet, you know, when they stood up and said, okay, what are you doing as we went across? We're really interested in that. We want to make sure as a district that we are really preparing these kids well and that we're providing the resources that is possible. So just as a point of reference, we want to pull in the same direction. And I say that to you and to Don and to Mary and to the people who are on this team. We see the Counseling Advisory Committee as something that's valuable here. It has the potential for making sure that we're getting input from everybody, not only within the school but outside the school. But in the end, we'll only be successful if we can agree on this is our goal and we're all going to pull in that same direction. So thank you and thank the folks who've worked on this over the last year. And we look forward to continuing to hold onto that rope and to pull in a direction and hope we agree on that direction because it's a lot easier to pull.
Just quick to reiterate, the value that you bring to us as a resource to communicate out our programs for our kids is tremendous, both you, the Board of Education, and Dr. Robinson. So it's our responsibility to continue to provide you with information as to what we're doing, and we want to continue to do that. And we love everybody's, we'll listen to feedback, and we provide the expertise that we have, and together, we all, you know, you're right, we need to all pull on this rope versus otherwise. So I agree, and I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And our last presentation while we transition, this is one of those that for years we've been talking about, again, back to the communication things. How do we ensure that kids who need a voice have a venue to express their voice, recognizing that kids nowadays do more texting than not. And so we have tried many, many different ways to do this from once upon a time, we used to have drop boxes where kids could drop notes in a box, and we had the teen talk line, and we had, you name it, we have tried different things as time and technology has evolved. And Mr. Chandler's here with a group that will talk about our most recent initiative and the success of that and maybe in some future directions. So, Mr. Chandler?
Great, thank you.
Ladies, come on around. Join the fold.
Somebody's got to click for this.
Mrs. DeFrisiano can click for you. Can you click it on?
Thank you so much for.
I'm glad to see her here. When I clicked in on this today, on our website, and I saw your name, and I saw today's date, I thought, somehow I've gotten into his webpage, and I shouldn't be here.
No, you were in the right place.
That was very timely, yes. That was a picture on that.
They want to flank you because they're concerned that you by yourself are too nervous.
Excellent.
So.
That's why I wanted them here. So thank you very much for this opportunity. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Craig Chandler, class assistant principal at the high school. I'm going to share with you a little bit of information about our text message hotline. And I'd like to thank all my fabulous assistants that are here from the CAP Teens program. We'll talk about that a little bit more later. But Jennifer, Sydney, Holly, and Kirsten are all here with me tonight to represent the CAP Teens, a fabulous group of kids. I feel a little bit like a traveling salesman, but if you'd indulge me, I did bring a prop just to show you some of our signage. So we will place that right here. This is really so that if anything bores you during our presentation, you could feel free to pull out your phone, send in a text message. To be able to see how the system works. Oh, thank you very much. So that you could see how the system works. But I'd like to share just a little bit about the rationale behind this program, and then our implementation, and then lastly, our data so far since we've implemented. So first of all, we developed this system primarily to address issues related to bullying, and developed it as a way to empower bystanders of bullying type behavior. As you'll see a little bit later on, it's evolved into something a little bit different, but it's still a fabulous resource for kids to be able to reach out when they need help. So the rationale, the background, it's estimated that there's 160,000 students that miss school each day as a result of bullying.
Not at Shen.
Not at Shen. But 25% of students who bully will be convicted of a crime in adulthood. 85% of bullying is witnessed. These two numbers are very important to me. 85% of bullying or harassment is witnessed, but only 10% of the time is it reported or is it addressed by someone. So there's a huge gap there. So that led us to this question. Is it better to have a school with a high number of reports of bullying or a low number of reports of bullying? Off the top of your head, you would think, well, a low number of reports has got to mean that we're doing a better job. However, based on the data from the first slide, with the number of incidents that are unreported, I feel like I want more reports. Because if we have more reports, at least we know that we've created a culture and a climate where kids are comfortable reporting the behavior because we know the behavior is going to happen. So that's the rationale behind it. So then we started looking for an ideal reporting system. We wanted something that was easy to use, native to teenagers. Was there some way that we could use something they're already using? And lastly, we wanted a resource that was anonymous at the front end to make kids more comfortable to speak out. You could actually hit that twice. So Are You OK is a web-based communication service that enables one-to-one text messaging. So basically, there's web-based software, and from the operator side, text messages come in, you reply on the keyboard with any number of auto responses or pre-crafted responses, as well as responses that are in the heat of the moment. Go ahead. So the benefits of this system is that it met my criteria, which were that it be easy to use, native to teenagers, and anonymous. Additionally, it's cost effective, and I'll talk about that a little bit in just a moment. Very easy to operate from any device, so you can operate it from an iPad, a laptop, a smartphone, just about any device that allows you to access the World Wide Web. Incidents and reports can be tracked, and then the system generates data to effectively plan for future supervision. So, for instance, after 4 months of time, if we keep accurate records from the operator end of the system, we can look at where are the instances of bullying occurring, and is there a trend, and is there a pattern, and what's our supervision look like in those areas or at those times. So we thought of it as a useful tool to be able to inform our decision making down the road.
Craig, can I ask you a question?
Yes, absolutely.
So is it assumed then that the issues are developing at school?
The issues that we're addressing actually could be developing anywhere at any time.
So you have the capacity to be off campus, to know that something's happening off campus based on what's being reported?
Based on the types of questions that we ask.
Okay.
And you'll see that when I get into the data end of it, it's not as clean as we would like it to be because it's all really based on the amount of information that people are comfortable in sharing. But at any rate, I mentioned that it was cost effective. It's cost effective because we've got some great community partners. So our first partner is Captain Youth and Family Services. We also have Michelle Smallwood sitting in the back, who's here representing Captain, and she works with all these fine young adults up here. So I would like to recognize her efforts. Captain actually funded this whole initiative, along with All-in-One Wireless, which is a local wireless provider. Seemed to be a good fit for them. They were passionate about this idea as well. So those two together have provided this service at no cost to the district. So I just wanted to use this as an opportunity to thank both of them. Also, Rob Potter from Moving Ads donated some of his time and developed these signs for us, gave them to us at a very a cost-efficient structure so that we'd be able to have these types of signs. These are all over High School East and High School West, so you may have seen them. We're working on getting them out into the community where people are willing to allow us to put them up. So we have that going for us. Go ahead. So like I mentioned earlier, if anyone is interested in trying it out, the service is open and live and available right now. So you can feel free to send a text message to 518-300-4320. and you'll see what kind of an instantaneous response you get. But that's basically, go ahead.
Is there an opportunity in this to follow up? What if you get God forbid, a text of something tragic happening right then and there?
Yep, I'll address that in just a second. So basically from the user end, from my smartphone, I'm a student in the high school. We've promoted this program. Kids can take out their phone, put that number right in their contacts, then they have it. They don't have to type it in all the time. So then they can just go to that "Are you okay?" contact, send a message. They can report things anonymously. They're communicating directly and in real time with an operator. And the operators are all individuals that we like them to be able to maintain anonymity as well. But they all have been trained, and they're all supervised by competent adults that know how to help them and encourage them to best handle the types of situations they may have to address. And then specifically to answer your question, if it was a immediate dire concern, we have the ability to trace the phone number and provide that phone number to 911. And 911 would be able to use, GPS locators the same way they would if the individual had called 911. And when the service is not operational, there are times, at midnight we don't have someone operating it, but users would get an auto response that prompts them to contact 911 if it's an emergency. But even in that situation, if it's not an emergency and the person happens to send it in at midnight, we have the ability to follow up first thing the next morning. So they'll get that instant message that we've received your message. If this is an emergency, please contact 911. We'll contact you at the beginning of our next operational day, which is basically the operational hours are Monday through Friday from about 7 a.m. to about 6 p.m. So we've got a pretty wide window there for kids to be able to reach out. All of those conversations, we hope, lead to face-to-face interaction. What I like to say is that when kids reach out to that service, in most instances, they already know what it is that they should do or what they need to do. Sometimes they just need the encouragement from a friendly voice to help them take that next step and have the courage to step into someone's office and share something face-to-face, or sit down with mom or dad and have that conversation face-to-face. So the kids really know already, but it's a way to encourage them to speak up and to speak out. Go ahead. So from the operator end, we talked about this a little bit already. Emergencies can be routed to appropriate personnel. We're still trying to encourage that face-to-face interaction, so through that communication, trying to get the person closer to possibly identifying themselves, or if not identifying themselves, through a text message saying, yeah, I will tomorrow, I will stop into the counseling center, or I will stop by and see the social worker, or I will stop in and see my class assistant principal, or one of those things. So, go ahead. So here's our data at this point. We opened this up for live messages at the very end of October. So the last week of October, it went live, was promoted to the entire high school community through some announcements and some video clips through homerooms in the morning that you could find on the high school YouTube channel. But to date, we've had 53 conversations. So those are user-initiated, someone reaching out anonymously to the service. We'd like to see that number increase, but just to give you an idea of, when you put that up against the calendar of when we've been in school and, as opposed to when we've been on vacation or, non-school days, it averages out to 2 per week. So I think that's a pretty decent place for us to start. We feel like through some further promotion efforts, and obviously people getting the response that they need when they use it, those numbers are going to increase. But we're pretty happy that it's a resource that's available, and at least twice per week, kids are reaching out and using it when they have need. So those 53 conversations have contained a total of 287 messages. So that's the entire back and forth in all of those conversations. The average response time is 11 minutes. And again, that's a little bit skewed because if someone sends something in at midnight and they don't get a response until 7 a.m., so really our response time is much better. But 11 minutes isn't too bad for, something that's not a life or death emergency and someone's just kind of looking for some encouragement or some support. They'll get instantaneously, whether the service is open or closed, they'll get an immediate response that says, thank you for contacting Are You OK? Someone will be with you shortly. So they get that, within 2 seconds. But then the actual operator, whoever happens to be operating the system, would follow up with a message. The types of concerns that we've seen, this is interesting because we created it to respond to and to empower bystanders of bullying. We haven't really yet seen a whole lot of messages related to bullying, but they all have been, social and emotional concerns and safety-related concerns. So we fielded general questions, simple things like, how do I find so-and-so's office? We fielded things in relation to substance abuse and kids concerned about friends that, they're afraid of where they're heading. We fielded social concerns and, I'm having difficulty making friends, I'm new here, can you help me out? Domestic type issues or relationship type issues, where one person is maybe controlling, in that kind of teenage romantic relationships. Academic concerns of kids that are, concerned about falling behind or being able to keep up and what resources are available to me, as well as some strictly medical emergencies. Kids have reported in with their symptoms and said, can you give me an idea? We're steering them to the nurse or to the doctor or to mom and dad. And, some real serious stuff with regard to self-harm and kids that are indicating that they've thought about harming themselves or they have concern for a friend who indicated that that friend had thought about harming himself or herself. So a really wide variety of types of things that we've been able to respond to in those 53 conversations. And then lastly, because it's the question that everyone asks, how much time is taken up with this with, pranks and people just fooling around? Since October, there were 11. So, and those 11 are not included in those conversations. So we had 53 legitimate conversations, and then 11 that we deem to be pranks. And we try to handle that very carefully because you never really know when someone initially reaches out if they may have a real concern behind it and just want to see what kind of response they're going to get. So through the entirety of those conversations, we've kind of pulled out those 11 and said, we don't think these were legitimate concerns, but those other 53, we feel pretty strongly that they were.
Two quick things on that. I think that you'll see the numbers increase. I think when you launch it, there's probably a group of kids that are probably, well, maybe this isn't anonymous, and so I don't want to get my parents, having a phone call because of this. And as they see more and more proof that, okay, it really is anonymous, that'll help it. The other question is from a bullying concern. If I call in or I text in, and say that I see somebody getting bullied right now, what happens? I guess what's the expectation once I make that call? Are you going to handle that kid that's bullying, or are you going to tell them, okay, you need to call somebody? What's the point behind that?
Well, I think the biggest point behind it is the idea of proximity. Mm-hmm. So if we have that idea, if you report in, hey, I'm in the cafeteria right now and I see this kid, these kids are really bullying him. Mm-hmm. If I happen to be the operator at that time, I can, dispatch someone or myself to that area to observe. And typically when adults are around, the behavior ceases. And the person who's the victim, that's really what they want. Mm-hmm. They're not necessarily looking for consequences to be implemented or, someone who's going to jump into the situation and make it worse. They want it to go away. So I think that's the initial idea. We don't always have the luxury of being able to get to it right then and there, but it does enable us to start having some conversations with kids the next day based on some of the things that we've heard or to stop by that location on the following school day just to kind of see what's going on and make sure kids know that we're aware of what's going on.
Thank you. So girls, are you operators in the system? You're taking a text and what about training?
Well, there was one of the trainings that we went to, and it was like the suicide prevention, because we also do the suicide hotline that we do, that like you can call in. But this it seems to be more for, because people are texting now, they don't really call as much anymore. So we do that too, and I went to a training, I know Jen went to the suicide prevention training, and that helped a lot. So it kind of just helped us to, understand what we would do in a situation, if it went to the extreme of suicide. So we do get trainings. Michelle trains us too with this and the suicide hotline too. So.
Yeah, and when you're like there doing this, we had a retreat over the summer where we also did trainings. So that was really helpful, and a lot of kids were on that, so it was like really beneficial for everybody. And especially if kids don't have as much training as others, when they do work the hotline, whoever is there like supervising, they always have training, so they always can train the kids on the spot. So everyone's getting a really good amount of training.
And if it's something we can't handle in-house, like it's something more serious, we have a lot of connections, like a phone with people, where captain is right next door to the state police barracks, so we have access to police if necessary and other community resources.
Yeah, like further resources to give whoever is having trouble, like whatever specific needs.
And we always work with we always have a buddy too, so we're never on the hotline by ourselves. So if, it got too hard for us, say someone called and it was just too hard for us to handle by ourselves, we can always put it on speakerphone, and there's always a supervisor there. If it's not Michelle, there's always another one, and there's always another teen there also that, could always help out.
Yeah, it's never like too much to handle. There's always like support for whoever's working it too.
So you all are going to a location. You're not walking the halls getting to your...
No.
And I should have mentioned before too, that if something becomes, seems like it's going in a direction that one of the operators isn't comfortable with, from the text message end and from the operator end, you have the ability as the adult that's overseeing it to just take over that conversation. And from the user end, you don't know that you've been transferred to someone else. So you're still maintaining the same conversation, but now that conversation has been transferred possibly to Michelle or to me or to someone else with some expertise.
Hopefully, most of the things that they deal with are relatively low stress. But in those instances where the kids are dealing with something that may cause a good deal of emotional or stress for them, do you have a mechanism in place to support them and make sure that they're okay?
Well, we've got the adults present at all times, so the kids are never.
To have her come forward. Have her come forward.
Yeah, Michelle, come on up.
Hi.
Hi.
With our Teen Talk trainings, so one of the things.
Michelle, come over here.
Sure.
Front of center.
Here, I'll back up. You can.
One of the things that's important is, primary importance is their mental health and their safety when they're on Teen Talk or the Are You OK text hotline. So we talk about debriefing. We have the Teen Talk supervisor there to always process any calls that they've had. Turn the phones off, turn the texts off, and make sure that the kids are okay and they're just processing what's transpired. Conversations with the parents are important. So as soon as we know that something may be more serious, they handled a call to the parents is a priority, and making sure that they're getting the support at home. And I'm always available as well. So, and like I said, we look at this as a group support system. So they might be on the phones or they might be doing the text individually, but they're doing it as a group. They can put the phone on speaker, or they can answer the text as a group. So it's never really on their individual shoulders. It's something that they handle together. So.
Janet, were you going to say?
I actually was just going to ask, is there any thoughts of bringing this also to the middle school?
I think we have started to have those conversations. I think maybe sometime, it's certainly available to middle school students now. If a middle school student was to send in a message tonight, someone would respond and give them the same kind of response. Maybe not necessarily during the school day, just because we know that, the maturity level and the uses for the electronic devices during the school day varies. So I think potentially that could be an area that we could move toward. But I think that would probably be the concern.
Mayor?
Three things that you all step forward for your peers, I think is an amazing thing, and I'm very grateful for that. For the partners that you were able to develop in the community, we often, in a lot of different contexts, talk about guided independence, but to have that safety net through you and through those partners is just great. And if you only had 53 helpful conversations, it would be a successful program. So I just think it's a wonderful thing, and I'm sure you're right. There'll be a lot more communication, People will see that they feel better, that it's effective, that they get help. It's great. So thank you very much for bringing it to us.
Thank you.
So it's a natural progression, right? I mean, Janet, at the captain board table over the years, the whole question has been, okay, how do we stay current? Because these hard lines aren't current, you know? So how do we keep up with the technology? Not just to make the numbers good, but how to provide the service to meet kids where they're at. And this is great that you're doing this. And
It should also be said, too, that it's about the CAP teams as well. It's training for leadership for them, and if I'm not mistaken, this is one of the larger groups of CAP teams that they've had a captain for a number of years, so.
And we can't say enough about these
They're
kids
doing
are
a terrific job.
phenomenal kids that, manage a number of other activities. And, if you looked at their report cards, they're top-notch there as well, and they're donating, hours and their expertise. So we're very thankful.
Yeah, we made the call to budget some more into other mental health initiatives in our district. Has there been any thought as to what we want to do next year, combining the effort? I mean, I think here you get a very good idea of what I would call the atmospherics, the mood within the district at a certain time. Maybe it's related to certain events or certain tension. But I think that could be helpful to guide, what I think we intend to have a mental health professional on board in the district. Any thought on how that's going to be integrated, or?
I don't think it'd be directly integrated. However, what it could potentially be is, as the young lady said, that there are resources, because that piece is more directly the personal piece, the parent, their child, the process that they have to go through. So that's a little bit, well, it's a lot more personal.
Yeah.
But that could also be a resource that, as you're talking to, make sure you go and see your counselor, or, so that's a related piece of it, but in terms of the integration piece, I don't think, because separate pieces, but yet related.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions for us?
Thank
Great.
you very much.
Thank you very much.
Nice job. Appreciate it. Nice job, ladies.
Thank you.
All right.
thank you. So we're on to those action items we mentioned earlier. We have certification of vote. We have in our packet the results of the voting last week, and we need to accept and certify those votes. Could I have a motion? Todd, second. Jim, any questions or comments? All those in favor?
Yeah.
We certify the vote. Congratulations again. It's official now. Okay, you can't change your mind. Next, we have bond resolution. Bus borrowing resolution. Do we have, can we have a motion for that? That allows us just to follow through on what we're doing. Janet, second? Mary? Any questions? All those in favor? Move forward with the borrowing for the buses. And we have bond refunding resolution. Kathy, just be clear with folks on that one. So that has the potential to save a substantial amount of money, right? And we have a financial advisor who goes through our debt every once in a while, just checks what we're doing and...
Correct.
says
We have
if-
a big debt coming due, or is callable in 2017, and by refinancing it now,
we're estimated to save on a conservative side about $517,000 over the next 12 years. Obviously depends on the interest rates when we actually go to sell the new debt, but that's the estimate, the conservative estimate right now.
And just to add 2 comments before the board closes motion. There are a couple of different things that we do. This one, we need board action because it's official refinance and official statement. However, and you'll hear, you get information towards the end of the year. As we close out every year, we also look for opportunities to pay off certain things earlier. Give you a perfect example. You just approved the bus borrowing resolution up to the $2.1 million. At the end of the year, we may financially look at it and say, you know what? Instead of borrowing that, let's buy the buses outright. The board action isn't necessarily for that, but that will be part of our year-end report. So I say that because we're always looking for different opportunities where we are financially and how we could avoid. It's no different than, you know, do you pay off your credit card payment right now, or do you pay the minimal payments, and by the time you finish paying for it, you pay 10 times the amount. So we try to look for those opportunities as well. So we have the bus piece we're going to look at. We have another $7 million capital debt that we, at the end of the year, as we look to say, okay, instead of reborrowing the $7.1 million, do we pay off X, whatever, $3 million of it and only have to reborrow 4? Huge difference in terms of, because as the board know, we've all been using the term leveraging opportunities. So we're not only just paying it off, but we're trying to avoid a smaller payment moving forward. So when we start looking at our debt service is decreasing dramatically. So if or when we decide to do another capital project, we create an opportunity where we can add debt and have minimal impact on the taxpayers. So that's kind of like, you're going to say, the method behind the madness as we look at these things during the year end. But there's certain ones that, by law, this one we need the board approval for because it has to go with the official statement as to when this action took place. So we do a lot of these things all the time, but this is one where we need the form of board action.
The expectation is the interest rates are only going to be going up. So by doing this now, we're taking advantage of it.
And right now, yeah, so we try to, you know, look at the market cycle and see how things are going. Yeah.
This isn't right on topic, but it's definitely related. The money that comes in to the district from tax sources and from state aid do not come into the district until sometime later in the year. When we do not have money coming in, some districts rely on revenue anticipation notes and so forth. Are we able to, since we utilize part of our reserve as a source of revenue, then tap immediately into that to carry over through the summer rather than revenue anticipation notes?
Yeah, we haven't had to do a TAN, tax anticipation note, since I've been here. In fact, I've never done one in 22 years. So I say it's a good thing to be in that situation. We came close in '09 when, if you guys recall, mid-year, when Patterson was governor, and at that point scared everybody because they delayed the March payment. The March state aid payment is a huge state aid payment. Spring payment is a large amount of money, and they were looking to delay that, and all of a sudden we had to kind of go back and look at cash flow to say if they delay this by 2 months, what does that mean from a cash flow perspective? And so and we were okay because, one, they didn't delay it, but even if they delayed it, we would have been tight, probably pushed back some bills, you know, a couple weeks here and there kind of thing. But we've been fortunate that we haven't had to do that. And so that's also part of when we look at the year end too, when the auditors come through and they start saying, okay, Kathy, this is truly going to be your fund balance. You know, one of the things we've been fighting as a school district to be is fiscally healthy, so we can start to try to dictate our destiny as much as possible. So if we look at a fund balance situation and we're exceeding the 4% piece of it, this creates an opportunity for us to say, hey, let's start paying down things that otherwise would cost us more to keep that. And I use credit cards as a perfect example. You know, it's better to pay off those high yield credit card bills than not, because in the future you can start saving again or avoiding expenses. And so we're trying to do both, being able to save to preserve a fund balance health, but also avoid high expenses. And the big part of it is, you know, one of the things that we haven't had a conversation with the board, but kind of hinted around it, that at some point in the next couple of years, we need to start thinking about a capital project to do some innovative type things. And we want to do that literally and be able to say to the taxpayers that what we're going to budget for the next several years is going to be the same. And legitimately be able to say it, not just say it, but actually show it, because our debt is decreasing and we're adding the debt to come back up to that zero margin.
Thank you. So can we have a motion to accept the bond refinancing? Todd, second. Janet, any additional questions, comments? All those in favor? Motion's approved. And we have two additional resolutions for NISBA on Affordable Care Resolution, Terrible Act, and the a constitutional resolution. Gary, do you want to say anything about either one of these?
Sure. As you know, every year, NISBA has a business meeting in December. And as a consequence of surveys and resolutions that are put together by the Board of Directors, along with those that are submitted by local school districts, the resolutions come before the business meeting to be voted on. Those that are accepted become part of the legislative agenda for the organization. And I've authored two resolutions here. One is similar but quite different from a resolution last year, which really turned out to be a tremendous mess because of the way it worked out. But tried to avoid some of the problems of last year and so forth. First, we're asking that NISBA work through the National School Boards Organization on legislation that is actually federal in nature. They have the scope, they have the resources, they have the interest in that. Consequently, we avoid the idea, well, we can't do this is beyond us. Also, last year, we talked in terms of totally eliminating the penalty that was incurred by districts when they exceeded certain levels of premium contribution. The penalty is 40% of anything that's above this particular threshold. This year, what we're saying to them is we're not interested in the elimination of the penalty. The likelihood that we would be able to get that, by the way, is very small because not only because it's federal, but because they use it as a revenue source to offset some of the other expenses where the revenue isn't sufficient to cover the services. But what we're saying is, look, people are going to be put into a situation where they will incur this penalty because the threshold is adjusted according to the cost of living, but the insurance premiums go up at a much faster rate. So that even though you initially start off below that threshold, inevitably, just about everybody will probably wind up where they will be above the threshold, given a number of years. So it said, please take that into account. Don't impose the penalty when that happens, because it's beyond the control of the people that are guilty of it, if you want to put it that way. The other provision was that in those instances where districts and employers have taken positive action to try to keep things down below or get them below, but despite those efforts have failed to get the premiums below the threshold, that there would be some kind of an accommodation. I haven't spelled it out. I don't know what it would be, but that was that resolution.
So is that a motion?
That's a motion to...
Do we have a second? Janet, any questions for Gary? We've talked about this
This is
before,
on
yes?
both of those resolutions? or
Well,
just
first
one?
Just the first one, okay. So all those in favor of the Affordable Care Act resolution, thank you.
The second resolution, which I guess I'm moving, but with the following explanation. We've seen what happens with the state legislature and the governor when they start the budget process. It is not a level playing field. The governor possesses a lot more power and authority over the budget than does the legislature. And yet, the legislature is probably the body that is more representative of the people. So if you completely cancel out their ability to enter effectively into the negotiations, in effect, you've rendered the people voiceless. And this resolution is designed to try to establish some balance, a checks and balances between the governor and the legislature. The specific language has to do with amending the state constitution. There is a process for that. A resolution has to be submitted, passed by the people once, then submitted and passed by the people again, and then a constitutional change can happen. And there are a couple of different approaches that could be applied to achieve that end, and they are spelled out in a resolution. The initial constitution gave the governors considerable power, but subsequent court decisions at the appellate level have given the governor even more, and that was stretched under the administration of Governor Pattison to what is now euphemistically referred to as the nuclear option, which basically means either you agree with me now and do what I say, or I'm going to get it anyway when I pass these resolutions of necessity. So we're trying to level the playing field.
So can we have a second for that motion? Todd, any questions? All those in favor? Motion's approved.
Just offer one comment, now that they're approved. I know they're going to NISBA, but something I would like to do with the board indulgence is to share the Affordable Care Act one with Tonko and Gibson, to say, here's a resolution our board passed.
Mhm.
Hopefully NISBA
Great.
will pick it up. If nothing else, get on the radar screen and to share
Absolutely.
the constitutional one with Tedesco, Ford, and Marchione.
Mhm.
Again, get on their radar screen because, quite frankly with you,
Yeah.
I don't think they'll be thinking otherwise about it. And so, if
Right.
nothing else, we try to attack it from a couple different angles.
Ironically, I think we'll have a very difficult thing when it comes to the Affordable Care Act. But it's interesting, you would think that the legislature, being that they are the ones that are put at a distinct disadvantage, would be very much interested in adopting.
They like to blame the other
Constitution.
guy, Gary. That's why
But-
they won't push it.
But,
He did it.
and one of the other consequences of this, and this is just a thought development, is that currently the governor has a tremendous amount of money coming into him for his campaign. Part of that is based on his ability to deliver to the people who are trying to buy influence. If you level a playing field here, his ability to deliver to the people who give him money will be reduced, and consequently, perhaps, maybe the influence of money on executive proposals and initiatives would also be reduced, hopefully.
Very well said, Gary. So before we have adjournment, I just want to call your attention. We have our business meeting is the second Tuesday of June, June 9th, and then the 23rd, a special meeting of the board, and our reorganizational meeting will take place the first Tuesday in July, July 7th, and in between, we have graduation on Thursday, June 25th, right?
Yep, senior awards this Thursday.
Yes,
I
yes.
won't be in attendance, hopefully. We have some board
Mr.
members.
Flint is scheduled, Thursday nights are award nights
Yeah, and then
for 3
ninth
weeks in a
grade
row,
the
yeah,
following
yeah,
week,
yeah.
Mr. Casey, could I just mention on June 9th, I'll be either delayed or absent.
Yes.
I have a conflict.
Yes, I
Thank
understand
you.
that. And June 13th is the Green and White Gala, for anyone who's so interested. Tickets are still available, and
And I have a football helmet if
This is-
anybody's interested.
Mrs. Gray is collecting auction items for that. Yes, Jim?
The special meeting on June 23rd, is there
It's a
one
study,
topic or?
it's a study session.
We'll probably
Yeah.
have some action item, a lot of staffing, because we're doing a lot of interviewing, well, they're doing a lot of interviewing, I'm not gonna put a we in it. Building and Dr. Wood, final interviews. So we're gonna try to get as much staffing as we can done before the year is over with, for a couple of reasons. One, some fingerprint laws change and things of that nature. Two, we wanna get people on board, so they come to a lot of curriculum work during the summertime. So we're gonna be aggressively looking to have staff in probably every meeting from here on out as we're going through the process, so we're not delaying. Because we don't want to lose people while we wait to get their approval.
Yeah, one thing I'll talk to you about is I think originally scheduled for the first meeting in June was an action item with regard to the counseling group. Mrs. Blayward probably won't be at that meeting, so we'll probably look to do that on
It's
the
not long.
23rd.
We have time, we can even do that until July too, it's not bad.
Yeah,
I mean, July and August, we have.
I have a motion to adjourn. Todd, second. Jim, all those in favor? Thank you. Meeting's adjourned.